Today, we're diving into the wild stories of 7 WWE legends who were absolutely terrified of Paul Orndorff. Even some of the biggest names in wrestling found themselves backing off when Orndorff was around. So what exactly did he do that made these legends fear him so much? Let's find out. Hulk Hogan. In the mid-1980s, Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff were two of the biggest stars in the WWF. Both were muscular, charismatic, and larger-than-life personalities who embodied the booming era of Hulkamania. But behind their friendship, there was tension simmering beneath the surface, a mix of jealousy, pride, and betrayal that exploded into one of the most memorable feuds of the decade. Initially, Hogan and Orndorff were allies. They teamed up often, fighting off villains like Roddy Piper and Cowboy Bob Orton. Fans loved seeing the two strongmen dominate the ring together. But Orndorff, who had once challenged Hogan for the WWF Championship, started feeling overshadowed by the Hulkster's massive popularity. The turning point came in 1986 on Saturday night's main event. During a tag match, Orndorff called Hogan for help, but was left hanging for a few moments. That small hesitation was enough to push him over the edge. Later, Orndorff shockingly turned on Hogan, clotheslining him and delivering his signature piledriver. A moment that electrified audiences and cemented him as one of the top heels in wrestling. Their feud became white-hot, leading to sold-out arenas and massive TV ratings. The rivalry peaked with the infamous steel cage match on January 3, 1987, where both men escaped the cage at the same time. A rare and dramatic finish that had fans on the edge of their seats. Hogan respected Orndorff's toughness, but admitted he was one of the few opponents he genuinely feared. Orndorff's legit intensity, short temper, and real-life toughness made him dangerous, inside and outside the ring. Even years later, Hogan would recall how Mr. Wonderful blurred the line between fiction and reality, making their feud feel as real as it got. Roddy Piper. Few rivalries in wrestling were as unpredictable as the one between Roddy Piper and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Both men were proud, fiery, and fiercely independent, who didn't like playing second fiddle to anyone. Their clashes in the mid-1980s were less about good versus evil, and more about ego versus ego, a battle of tempers that could explode at any moment. In the early WWF days, Piper and Orndorff often found themselves on the same side. They both despised Hulk Hogan and teamed up to take him down, most notably at the very first WrestleMania in 1985. Piper was the mouthpiece, the loud, trash-talking mastermind, while Orndorff brought the muscle. But when their plan to destroy Hogan and Mr. T backfired, the cracks in their alliance began to show. Piper, furious at losing the spotlight, blamed Orndorff for their defeat. Orndorff didn't take the insult lightly. The two began arguing during interviews and even brawled backstage. On TV, their heated exchange turned physical when Orndorff finally snapped, attacking Piper and severing their partnership in brutal fashion. Their feud reflected their real-life intensity. Both were known for being hot-tempered and stubborn, and many insiders said their animosity wasn't entirely scripted. Orndorff's explosive anger and Piper's relentless sarcasm created genuine tension. What made the rivalry fascinating was that neither man ever truly backed down. They traded insults, punches, and pride, each determined to prove he was the tougher, smarter competitor. In the end, their feud helped establish both as larger-than-life personalities who thrived on confrontation. Piper later admitted Orndorff was one of the few wrestlers he was actually cautious around, not because of fear in the traditional sense, but because Orndorff's temper could ignite in an instant, turning any argument into an all-out fight. The Heenan family, Paul Orndorff's rivalry with Bobby the Brain Heenan and his notorious Heenan family, was built on betrayal, bruised pride, and payback. It was one of the most emotionally charged chapters of Orndorff's WWF run. In the mid-1980s, Heenan was managing some of the biggest villains in the WWF, guys like Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, and later, Andre the Giant. When Heenan added Orndorff to his stable, it seemed like a perfect fit. Orndorff had just turned his back on Hulk Hogan, embracing his darker side, and Heenan promised to take his career to new heights. With Heenan's brains and Orndorff's brawn, the two looked unstoppable. But that partnership didn't last long. Heenan was a master manipulator who liked being in control, and Orndorff wasn't the type to take orders. Their relationship started cracking when Orndorff felt Heenan was using him for money and spotlight rather than respecting him as a true star. Tension built up week after week, with subtle insults and missed opportunities, until it finally exploded on TV. The breaking point came when Heenan called Orndorff a loser after a rare defeat. That one insult triggered Orndorff's infamous temper. In a shocking outburst, he grabbed Heenan by the neck and tossed him around like a rag doll. Fans went wild as the arrogant Mr. Wonderful destroyed his former manager and officially turned babyface again. From then on, the Heenan family made it their mission to destroy him. Orndorff was targeted by Heenan's other clients, but he fought back every time with ferocious intensity. Tito Santana. When Paul Orndorff and Tito Santana crossed paths in the WWF, it wasn't just a regular battle, it was more like war. Tito was one of the most respected baby faces in wrestling, known for his discipline and fighting spirit. Orndorff, on the other hand, was explosive, short-tempered, and unpredictable. Whenever these two met in the ring, fans knew they were in for a fight that felt real, not rehearsed. Their rivalry began after Orndorff's infamous fallout with Bobby Heenan and his gradual shift back toward being a fan favorite. Tito, always standing for fairness and sportsmanship, didn't fully trust Orndorff's change of heart. The tension between them built during tag matches and interviews, where Tito often questioned Orndorff's integrity, calling out his past betrayals and violent temper. Orndorff, never one to take criticism lightly, saw those comments as a personal insult, and things got physical fast. Their matches were stiff, fast-paced, and emotional. Tito's speed and technical skill clashed perfectly with Orndorff's raw power and aggression. In one televised encounter, Orndorff completely lost his cool after Tito out-wrestled him early on. He shoved the referee, screamed at the crowd, and unleashed a vicious assault on Santana, pile-driving him into the mat in a shocking display of rage. The attack drew massive heat from the audience and solidified Orndorff's reputation as one of the most dangerous men in the WWF. Off-screen, Tito respected Orndorff's toughness, but admitted he was cautious around him. Orndorff's temper wasn't an act. He was known for getting heated if things didn't go his way, even in the locker room. Masked superstar, known for his brutal strength, technical skill, and no-nonsense attitude, the masked superstar Bill Eadie was one of the few men who could match Orndorff's intensity. Their rivalry in the early 1980s, especially in the Mid-South and Georgia territories, was a fierce test of willpower between two powerhouse athletes who didn't know how to back down. At that time, Orndorff was rising fast, known for his sculpted physique and explosive temper. The masked superstar, a seasoned veteran, didn't appreciate the young star's cockiness. He saw Orndorff as talented but arrogant, a man who needed to be taught respect. That attitude set the stage for a series of rough, punishing encounters that quickly turned personal. Their matches were not flashy, they were fights. Both men had reputations for working stiff, meaning they hit hard and didn't hold back. Fans could feel the real tension between them as they traded heavy punches and slams that looked, and often were, painfully real. Orndorff's temper sometimes got the better of him, leading to chaotic brawls that spilled out of the ring and into the crowd. What made this rivalry memorable was how evenly matched they were. The masked superstar's methodical style countered Orndorff's fiery aggression perfectly. Each wanted to prove who was the tougher man, not just the better wrestler. Behind the scenes, even the veteran superstar was said to tread carefully around Orndorff. His short fuse and intimidating presence earned him respect, but also a bit of fear. Their feud helped solidify Orndorff's image as someone who could hold his own against anyone, even the most seasoned and feared competitors in the business. Ric Flair. Flair was the fancy, smooth-talking nature boy, dripping in gold and style, while Orndorff was the intense, no-nonsense powerhouse who didn't care for Flair's show-off. When their paths crossed in the NWA during the early 1980s, it was inevitable that sparks would fly. Flair, the reigning NWA World Heavyweight Champion, was used to opponents treating him with respect. But Orndorff didn't bow to anyone, not even the champion. He went into every encounter with Flair, determined to prove he was the superior athlete and the tougher man. That attitude instantly rubbed Flair the wrong way, leading to a fierce rivalry fueled by ego and mutual disdain. Their matches were hard-hitting and full of tension. Flair tried to frustrate Orndorff with his usual mind games, stalling, taunting, and cheap tricks. But Orndorff didn't play along. He met Flair's arrogance with pure aggression, overpowering him with suplexes, clotheslines, and his devastating piledriver. The contrast between Flair's slick, technical wrestling and Orndorff's brute force style made for compelling encounters that had fans split down the middle. In promos, Flair mocked Orndorff's temper and called him muscles without brains, while Orndorff fired back by calling Flair a coward who hid behind his title and his fancy suits. The verbal jabs added fuel to an already fiery feud, and each match seemed to push Orndorff closer to snapping. Even Ric Flair, known for his bravado, later admitted Orndorff was one of the toughest opponents he ever faced. He respected him, but also feared his intensity. When Paul got mad, Flair once said, "You could see it in his eyes. He wasn't playing anymore." Sting. When Paul Orndorff faced off against Sting in WCW during the early 1990s, it became a moment that no wrestling fan can ever forget. Sting was the bright, energetic face of the company, who connected with fans through his charisma and athleticism. Orndorff, by then a seasoned veteran, was grittier, meaner, and carried the chip of a man who'd been to the top and wasn't ready to step aside. The tension between them reflected more than just a storyline. It symbolized old-school toughness versus new-era flash. Their rivalry ignited when Orndorff aligned himself with Paul Roma as Pretty Wonderful, one of WCW's most arrogant tag teams. They saw Sting as everything they despised, a fan favorite who got cheers without having to fight for respect the hard way. Orndorff, in particular, took that personally. He openly mocked Sting's popularity, calling him a poster boy, not a wrestler. That attitude led to several heated confrontations, both in tag matches and singles bouts. In the ring, Orndorff brought a ruthless, punishing style that contrasted sharply with Sting's high-energy offense. Matches between the two often started with technical wrestling, but quickly broke down into brawls, with Orndorff's temper taking over. He would use cheap shots, distractions, and brutal pile drivers to try to slow down Sting's momentum. Fans could feel the real resentment behind Orndorff's attacks. He wanted to prove he still belonged at the top. At one point, Orndorff and Roma feuded with Sting and his partner, Dustin Rhodes, in a heated tag team rivalry that became one of WCW's highlights in 1994. Their matches were physical and unpredictable, with Orndorff often trying to injure Sting to make a statement. Behind the scenes, Sting respected Orndorff, but admitted he was intimidating. And that wraps up today's video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss our latest uploads. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.